Hello again, it's Chantel Ray Real Estate. I'm Jimmy Ray. This is John McLaren and Wanda Adams. And how are you today? If you're looking to buy a home, boy, do we have some important information for you. You guys, let's talk about the buying process. Now, I know we've done that in podcasts before. But more specifically, everybody knows we're going to help you find the home of your dreams. We're going to ratify that contract. Everybody's going to be happy. What happens after contract negotiation and ratification?
That's an excellent question, Jimmy Ray.
Yeah, that's why I posed it.
Buyers are all excited. Their offer's been accepted, and now they're like, what do we do next?
Right.
So the first thing is usually the home inspection. We want to get that scheduled right away, make sure the buyer is okay with the condition of the home, and then, we ask the seller to make some repairs, come to agreement with all of that.
Mm-hmm. And there's depending on what the contract says, there's a different limit of time that you have to do the contract.
Correct.
Are the inspections and also other stuff in that time frame.
Yeah, the money that you're going to put out, I think, is important. So at the time of contract signing or contract ratification, we're going to deposit your earnest money deposit, right? So typically that's between $500 and $10,000, depending on how expensive of a house that you're buying. So just know that right after ratification, we're going to cash that first check, and that's going to be your first kind of money that you put out. Then, as Wanda said, we go into the home inspection phase, and most people don't know that home inspector needs to be paid at the time of the inspection.
Right.
So typically you're going to have another $300 to $500 for those inspections. Right there within that 10-day window is what I like to tell people. That's what I usually write in my contracts. But in the contract, it will say how long you have to do your inspection and then propose the repairs that you want to do. And that is the next phase of the negotiations, is those repair requests.
Yeah. But also in that 10-day period that you're doing inspections, that's when you're going to loan as well.
Right.
You
need to make your loan application and get all your documents into the lender.
Right.
And so during that whole time where you're inspecting the property and you're worrying about all that, you're also going through what can be a tedious process to get the loan officer all your documents. And so that first 10 to 14 days is pretty intensive with the things that are required of you, with the money that you're putting out to get the home inspected.
And that's why it's important to have an agent you can trust. Anybody at Chantel Ray will do to lead you through that inspection period, because not only do we know what we're doing and looking out for, but the home inspectors we have here on staff are going to inspect that home from the dirt to the chimney cap and make you aware of everything about that house. And really, when you're buying a home, it's the biggest thing you've ever bought or will ever buy probably. You're going to want to know everything about it.
And those inspectors, we've done thousands of home inspections and termite inspections with those people. So we have... a buyer who just picks somebody out of the phone book has no idea who they're getting. We have a lot of experience with these people, and if they don't cut the mustard, they're off the list. We wouldn't still have them if they weren't great.
They wouldn't be part of the Chantel Ray team if they didn't perform excellent service.
That's right.
So and that's one reason you really want to have an agent that knows what they're doing. And you're not a Chantel Ray agent if you don't know what you're doing, FYI. So now we've gone through the 10-day inspection period. We've negotiated, okay, we want these repairs made. Then
and that's sort of the second round of negotiations, right? People think the negotiations are over. I have a ratified contract. I've come up with the price. I've come up with what closing cost assistance and the closing date. But after you do your inspection, you may realize there's some stuff wrong with this house, and you're going to ask for a bunch of things from the seller. And the second round of negotiations begin. And quite honestly, some deals are lost in this phase where the buyer discovers something about the house that's a deal breaker for them, and the seller won't fix it. So we got to get through that second round of negotiations. And then once you do that, it's time to order the appraisal. And that's going to be your next kind of outlay of money, about $500 to $600 for the appraisal, and you're going to be paying that at about the 10 to 14 day mark. So you can see, there's a couple times in that first 14 days where you're going to put out a little bit of money. So it's important to know that going into the transaction, for sure.
And usually from that point on, no more money, which is always good.
Until closing day, right?
That's right.
And you're going to bring some of your own money to that day, and but yeah, that's right. You get a little grace period for any more money for a period of time. And then the appraisal needs to happen, right? So we just ordered the appraisal. And this is another place where deals sometimes fall between the cracks. Is the appraiser comes out, and the appraiser's job is to say, what is the home worth?
Yeah.
And are there any repairs that are needed to meet the minimum requirements for this loan? And so if you're under contract for $300,000, let's say, and the appraisal comes back at $295,000,
right?
Now we're $5,000 short. And then we could possibly be in a third round of negotiations
So
with
what
the
happens
seller.
there, Wanda?
Well, if the appraisal comes back short, then yes, the options are either the buyer pays that $5,000 difference in this scenario,
Right.
which I would not recommend to any
Never.
And they have
client.
to do it in cash because they
Yes.
won't lend the money for
That's
any
correct.
more than it appraises for.
That's correct. So
Yeah.
the buyer would have to come out of pocket $5,000,
Okay.
or the seller would have to reduce the price by $5,000, or either party can be like, I'm not doing that, and then the seller's like, well, I'm not doing that, or they could sign a release and move on to the next property.
Well, now, J-Mac, is there, when let's say the appraisal comes in low, that's a negotiation period at that time, again, for what they're, okay, so now what are we going to pay? Are they going to drop it to the appraised price, which is what I always recommend my buyers, make them do that.
Right.
But is there anything else that they can be renegotiated at that time? Are they renegotiating a whole new
Everything.
Agreement?
Yeah.
Or is it just the price?
So, for instance, when I represent a seller, if we agreed to do, let's say, 10 repairs, and those were going to cost $10,000.
Yeah.
Well, I'm recommending to my seller, don't do those repairs until after the appraisal comes in, because if you haven't done those repairs yet, you can use that as leverage, right? So I might say, okay, we'll reduce the price by $5,000.
Yeah.
If I represent the seller in this scenario, we'll reduce the price by $5,000, no problem. But we're going to take off $5,000 of the repairs that we were going to do, essentially netting the seller the exact same amount of money. So to answer your question, yes, things like the repairs that you agreed upon earlier can be renegotiated at this point.
Oh.
And even closing cost assistance, again, as a
Closing cost assistance, that's
as
a
the
great
seller's
one.
agent,
Wow.
if the appraisal's low, then okay, well, we're going to take back some of that closing cost assistance.
Yeah,
that we
maybe there
offered.
was a $15,000 allowance for closing costs in this offer.
Yeah.
Appraisal comes in $5,000 low. I'll reduce it $5,000, but I'm reducing the closing cost assistance from 15 down to 10. And
Or
it doesn't come
somewhere
out
in
of
the middle as a negotiation.
More often than not, you're sort of meeting in the middle.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it can go any of those ways. Buyer comes up with the money, seller comes up with the money, they split the difference, or they both walk away.
Yeah.
It could go any of those ways.
Wanda, J-Mac, and Jimmy Ray, you can see with this process, you really need somebody you can trust that knows the process to look out for your best interests and get you that dream home for the least amount of money. 717-1003, Chantel Ray Real Estate. We'll talk soon.